Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds, I'm Narcus Dave, and as usual, I am joined by this nerd over here. Boop.
Nerdarchy Ted, how are you doing this fine, lovely evening, sir?
I'm doing good. You know, it used to be mirrored, so you had to point in the opposite direction,
Uh-huh.
and then something happened, and then it wasn't mirrored, and now it's mirrored again.
It's gone in all kinds of directions. I just don't point anymore. It's hey.
I'm just gonna have to do this.
He went that way.
You went
Or
another
was it that
way.
way?
Yeah, so we were back for our weekly live chat. We took last week off because Ted wanted to take his kids out trick or treating or something
Indeed.
along those lines.
Indeed. I'm a kid at heart. I still like doing all that stuff. As long as my kids will let me, I'll keep doing it.
Yeah, you think is this the last year for the boy?
It's possible. I mean, he's 14, almost 15, so it's a bit rough to
Yeah,
win that, but I don't know.
that's true. So we're going to be talking about famine tonight, and already Dak has made the comment: farming to famine, a bit dystopian. Um, yeah, he also mentioned four horsemen of apocalypse. I know we've definitely done war and death as topics, so why not cover the other horsemen in case we forgot to do them? I'm not entirely sure. So we're going to be covering famine and pestilence as well. Uh,
So I think Dak has a bit of a point of going from farming to famine is like you know if you don't take care of the adventures on the farm, it could lead to a famine. So it's not like how on earth did you make this kind of a jump? But I mean, our topics week to week aren't always a connection, but sometimes they are.
I think when I was thinking about it, because we picked farming, I was like, wait a minute, what's the opposite of farming? I'm like, famine. Wait a minute, famine's one of the four horsemen of apocalypse. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure we did these other ones. What about
Right.
this one?
So, there is a big difference between a typical, famine where it's, could be a drought, it could be a plague of locusts, it could be, whatever. And, the actual, apocalyptic event of famine. So you're talking about regional versus global situation.
Well, I mean, even like from there, we can look at several different things. Like a famine could easily just be the backdrop, right, of what's
Mhm.
going on in a campaign. And sometimes, like, a famine is a symptom of other things. Like, you mentioned a drought, right? A drought would cause a
Mhm.
famine,
Mhm.
sure. But also, having already mentioned it, war, right? War disrupts things. I mean,
Yep.
in the real world right now with Ukraine, like they call it the breadbasket of the world, and with there being conflict there, it makes it harder to get grain and stuff out of there. So
Yep.
you know you can look at it as a component of something else that's going on in your games, and just something that has to be dealt with. And also, unfortunately, with a lot of that stuff, whether you're talking about the fantasy world or the real world, it generally doesn't touch the wealthy nearly as much as it does the common folk, the small folk. And for that reason, I feel like adventurers themselves wouldn't suffer the same way, because they
Right.
tend to be flush with gold more often than not. But at the same time, a lot of times they find themselves traveling in the same circles as those folks and interacting with them and dealing with them, you know, as much or more than they would with the nobility, the affluent, royalty, and the wealthy folks of your realm. So they would be confronted directly by the consequences of this famine.
I would say, like on average, like most games would go that way. Like they're dealing with the common folk more, than the upper echelon. But of course, like there are those rare anomalous campaigns where you are engrossed in that society, and you're playing a very political intrigue. So like you're only dealing with that. So like it's possible to just completely circumvent the common folk, but
Well, yes and no, right? Like, yes, that it may be typical for them to not have to deal with it in those games, and then for you have them, if you were to have those circumstances going on, you could almost use it for shock value,
Right.
right? Because they're used to dealing with the niceties of society. They don't have to deal with the unpleasantry, and all of a sudden, boom, in their face, like they're dealing with, the complete opposite of what they're used to and what they've been exposed to. And maybe that'll affect the players. Maybe they won't care.
So like I look at this, and I do think that having the, the broader term of, famine really could be looked at, in those categories that you brought up, with it being a backdrop. you know it's not anything that you can really go and fix at the moment.
Mm.
It changes the campaign world, and changes, some of the problems that the common folk are dealing with, and in essence, the adventurers to some degree. How much of a problem would it be if, well, sorry, the place with the good bread just isn't available today because there's a grain shortage and I got no bread to make. Sorry. Uh, that greatly changes some of the niceties and the staples of a campaign that you're in, and could possibly reorient the players. Like, well, no, forget about the main story. I need my damn good bread. I'm traveling to the next town over, and I'm getting stuff for this guy just so that he can make me his bread.
Well, yeah. I mean, I always like to look for the small ways to impact your
Mm-hmm.
campaign and the game. And you invoked one of the NPCs and establishments from your game that
Mm-hmm.
we would often go and visit. For some reason, when we were going to the to the local jail constabulary, and we wanted to interrogate somebody, we always stopped by and got the good bread first.
Yep.
But yeah, it would be really evocative for the players to be going about their business. They're like, oh, we got to go investigate. We have to go investigate and interrogate these newer dwells. But first, you know what that means? We got to get the good bread. And like the first thing that they're impacted by is the fact, as you approach Everwinds, the place with the good bread, you notice something's missing. You don't smell the baking of the good bread. Matter of fact, you don't smell the baking of anything.
Right.
When and then in the distance on the stoop of Everwinds, you see a large portly man sitting, and even from this distance you can see his shoulders heaving, as what you can only assume is someone sobbing. And then as they approach, like they get the story of like, oh, we can't do it. I can't make the bread because we don't have any grain. What do the players do about it? Are they going to do anything about it? What is the underlying cause? Although you did say they can't do anything, but I'm like, well, this is D&D, so they can always do something about it, right? Like, oh, it's a
Right.
drought. Maybe they can go find the hierophant of this area, the high ranking druid, to come and bless the lands with rain and plant growth in order to save the town and their harvest. So,
you
but
know
that could be a quest.
but it really depends upon, like, what is causing it. Is it being caused by war? So, do you have to go stop the war to make, to make this, not a problem anymore? So, like, regardless of what the component is, it's meant to be a backdrop, not a let's just go solve the problem.
Yeah.
I can get my thing. It could be the quest. It could be a, hey, are you able to deal with something? And depending upon what of the different issues are, like, okay, yeah, you could go get the druid to, control weather and stop the drought from happening. But perhaps some, people in town, in the the leadership of the town have caused and done something to piss off the local druid, and they've literally brought in an insect plague. So you got,
Yeah.
of locusts destroying everything, and it's like, nah, the land will be fine after I, run these people off.
After I purge it.
So, like, you could have the druid be the problem or the solution, and sometimes it could be both. And then, of course, then there's every other iteration of what could cause a famine to happen, and you know trying to find a solution to those things winds up being its own quest, its own problem, its own thing to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, you have all the normal real world problems that you can throw out there, right? Like
Hmm.
we mentioned drought, war. There could be an infestation of some kind of invasive species, whether it be plant life or wildlife, that has caused all the damage. But then also it's D&D, right? So like you could literally be like there could literally be a god representing famine. Dak had kind of mentioned something along these lines in the chat. And they could be in play. They could be unleashing, famine demons or devils from the lower planes onto the prime material plane that are going about and causing these problems. Um, or you maybe in your world, like everything has a spirit. The rain, weather, even harvest, right? And these spirits are being captured, so they can't do what it is that they do. And it could be a quest to free them, or like even like you were when you were talking about, it could be the quest, but maybe it's not. Like maybe you do get the druid to come in and they solve the problem, but then it immediately happens almost right after they do the thing that should fix the problem,
Hmm.
hinting at something else is going on. Like, oh, it turns out that this particular region has somehow pissed off the harvest god.
So Parks is weighing in. What about a gluttony demon? That's absolutely a scenario of an invasion of somewhere else where they're just eating everything that they can.
That
Uh,
makes me think of Storm King's Thunder, the prequel to Sky King's Thunder. Um, one of the giants, the hill giant, decided, like, I think their way to get to godliness is to become as physically large as possible by eating as much as possible. So
yep.
now I'm just picturing like these hill giants or some other monster like that just setting up shop, and and just eating everything, including raw grain.
It's entirely possible. Like you specifically pointed out that once you combine everything that could be in the real world, the fantasy world, and then you include random magic, it's literally open to completely anything you want to have happen.
Yeah, instead of like an infestation of locust or some other invasive species, it's like ant kegs.
Yeah, and, the serious issue or a serious group of ankegs coming in. Not only are they destroying the land through burrowing and what have you, but like them spitting acid all over everything is definitely not going to be good.
So and then the other thing is, like, if you like a lot of early D&D, you can see there's a lot of influences from the Bible, especially with different spells and things that kind of work its way into the game. So there's no reason why you couldn't take the four horsemen apocalypse and make them entities in your world. Make them demons or some other powerful divine being, and give them a physical manifestation. And obviously, you could do a whole lead up to it, and you know, the four horsemen are unleashed, and they go to the four corners, and the maybe the first one the players encounter is famine, and or at least the results of what they're doing, and then it kind of creates this mystery of like what happened, how did it happen, and then they realize it's connected to this entity, and after some research they can find out that there's other entities that are connected to this one, which could lead, like, this could be a whole whole campaign arc.
Absolutely, and I like, and it could be a high tier, third, fourth tier kind of scenario, and it could be a scenario of if they are literal divine beings, perhaps they're not something that can just be defeated through typical combat. And that's something that D&D doesn't typically deal with, because if you stat something, people are going to fight it and find a way to.
Yeah.
So like, I like the idea of having to find a way to sate the need of whatever this divine creature is, that isn't just, oh, it's famine, it needs to destroy X amount of you know food stores. It's something else. I think those kind of things can be a very fun game. And maybe these things do attempt to fight things around it, but that boggles the mind, because it's like, all right, well, could you put something against the players that legitimately can't be killed? Because like, I won't ever stat a god, because I don't feel, unless you're equipped with artifacts that specifically state this kills gods, you just can't. And that's just my style of play. And if you guys out there play differently, then by all means, I'm not here to say my way is right or wrong. Just my preferred style. So like, I like that thing of, all right, the very obvious, this is a foe beyond you. You best flee.
Well, like that's one approach, or it could be something that maybe you can temporarily defeat it, but it's going to come back no
Sure.
matter what you do. And if you want to really solve the problem, you got to kind of figure out how to put the genie back in the bottle. Whatever you decide the MacGuffin or mechanism is for, what kept these divine beings locked away in your world. Well, what is the process to redoing that?
Right.
And I always think of like broken seals for some reason. How do
Mm-hmm.
you put them back in their cage and reseal it?
Right. And seals is in, like, a circle, not the not.
Arr, 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 that would be Zoo Mafia. That's a different game.
Yes. uh, now I gotta write an adventure about the broken seal.
The broken seal. So that's kind of like big picture stuff. But you could also come up with like a lot of smaller stuff, and even start your campaign with that famine backdrop, where it's just some simple things like fetch quests, but in this case, instead of like a specific item or something, like grain has become and food has been really difficult to bring in, like they need skilled adventurers to escort a caravan that's bringing in this food, right? And it could be really small things like that. That would be one idea. Another idea is you know the community has taken to rationing because there's so little, but unfortunately someone keeps breaking in and stealing. And it could
Mhm.
even be like, oh, who's robbing the grain stores? Is it the local thieves guild? Is it a gang? Is it just one of the locals?
Is it the nobles who want to make sure that they've got more than their fair share? Hiring out the thugs, and it's like, all right, I'll give you a portion of whatever we take, and a little bit of coin, so that you've got enough to cover you, but I'll make sure that I've got enough to cover me.
Yeah, nice. Christopher Charles. How about an invasive species of plants or animals that decimate game and livestock, or plants that leach the soil? I love it. It also makes me think of a book series I really enjoyed, Spring Hill Jack by Mark Hoder. Um, Sir Richard Burton is novels that were pretty good, and they in one of the novels, it's not much of a spoiler because it's like a total throwaway comment, but it's my favorite. And they talk about the invasion of the Irish into the UK because there was a eugenics experiment gone wrong in Ireland, and it's been overrun by carnivorous plants. So Ireland was just completely lost to plants.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah,
I guess they would not be lucky four-leaf clovers over
not those ones, that's for sure.
there.
Because I think they're man
uh,
eaters.
so Tim S has a question. How do you guys like to involve food and eating for an adventuring party?
I I like them more as events and colorful ways to add kind of like some pun intended spice to your campaign world by showcasing like favorite foods for regions, exotic foods. Players like to introduce that stuff in my Under the Dome game. Like one of the things you guys introduced was like a food wagon with that serves some kind of favorite meat wrapped in some kind of bread. Which is very vague, and it's just something the players wanted to throw in there. So sure, why not? But I think it's a great way to highlight different cultures and different types of people in your game worlds.
Yeah. I like to just leave it open and allow the players to add as much or as little as they feel like. If you're familiar with the channel, you know that Doug ran years ago. His Spelljammer game was all about food, and then we revisited over on the live channel that with another food-based show that we took it away from D&D and into Quest. In my Dungeons and Delving game, we had it was your character was the cook, right, Dave?
Yes, yeah. So
Uh,
Dungeons and Delving was the game show, but it was kind of like what is it? What was the catchphrase?
I'd have to go through my notes again, but it was essentially a adventuring meets game show reality television. Um, you
Oh
know,
man, that's really annoying me. Yeah,
all
but
all for
I thought my character's thing was he thought he was signing up for a cooking competition, and someone switched out the paperwork on him, and so he ended up doing the dungeon delves instead.
yeah, and therefore you would come in with your little treats and pastries and what have you, which was amusing and fun. I know that I think Jake's character in one of my games over with the Chaos Crew. I don't think it was Ordo. It was a character before, but he had the gourmand feed as well. So he was always cooking food for everybody to do the fun things. So I like when players decide to get into that stuff
Well,
because it
think about it too. And you got a world of like giant animals, giant crabs, crayfish. Like, imagine the foods that would be get made. And actually, like, we can circle back into the famine aspect because right from today's headlines, I think it's like 1 billion crabs just went missing. Alaskan king crab legs. It's a huge industry and trade. They even make reality TV shows about it. But like,
yeah, they've been talking about that for the last few weeks. And my wife watches the crab shows, and it's like, well, I don't know what we're gonna do for this whole season because they can't go out on the boats because those fishermen can't go bring in that crab. Like, they operate on a quota, and the quota is zero. Like nope, we're
yeah.
not having crab this time. And I'm like, wow.
So I mean, and you could take that with any food source in the D&D world and be like, okay, well, what's going on here? Especially if it's something fun and exotic. That a local people tend to use to sustain themselves, and now you have to figure out what's going on because like those crabs are like we're not sure if they're eating each other. We don't know if they moved into Russian waters, and we just can't get to them. We just don't really know exactly what the problem is. We just know they're gone.
Yep. And famine affects to so many different levels. And as we're in November at this point in time. So here in the States, people are getting geared up for Thanksgiving, which is pretty much, I believe, like the biggest eating holiday. Like, well, yeah, you might have lots of people eating candy at Halloween, and you might gather for the December holidays, but I don't think any of them compare to the massive spread that is usually put in at a Thanksgiving dinner feast in some places. uh, which is also why loads of organizations are doing food drives, which absolutely appeals to the concept of famine at this point in time.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously too, like, you know, in some ways you might even be able to affect like the upper echelons in a time where they might be, usually they hold festivals or something, and they just can't because there's not enough.
Mhm.
And what does that do, right? Like, do will the peasants revolt?
So like that could very well be like a quest. Well, what if the nobles are willing to pay exorbitant prices to gather whatever resources so that they can hold what they want to have as a feast. Oh, if a chicken is usually 2 copper, well, damn it, I want to be able to put a chicken on my table, so I'm going to pay not 2 copper but 12 gold. Ridiculous prices, for that kind of stuff. So, like, I think that could be an amusing situation and quest, all dealing with famine and showcasing the lengths at which some people will go to achieve normalcy.
The one of the games that I ran, involved goblins, freezing chickens and then using them. It's basically they were making ice cocktails out of them because that's what they like to eat. Uh,
Sure.
and like, I think one of the solutions that the party came up with was they kind of helped them to start farming their own ice chickens so that they could stop robbing the farmer. So like, how many times is conflict in the D&D, especially low level, because it's a competition for resources, right? While it
Mm.
may not be a famine, but it could turn into one if one side, you know, completely gains the upper hand over the other. So it creates this interesting dynamic and places for not just going out and killing the monsters, but maybe the players actually solve their problem, in a way that is going to open up role playing encounters that they can have, and also it can be also an ongoing situation instead of going in, slaying all the goblins, they're just gone, and and not there anymore.
Well, that's always the fun thing of when you're looking at writing material or playing a game is, are you just dealing with what's in front of you and not looking at the bigger picture, or are you trying to solve not only the problem now but the problem later as well? I think that can be a lot of fun and really has the ability to play in on the characters in the party that have the higher intelligence and the higher wisdom to really be looking beyond the short-sightedness.
So we're at the halfway mark, so I imagine we should mention that this video is sponsored by Easy Roller Dice, and we want to thank them, but also down in the description, you can find a link to Easy Roller Dice as well as a one-time coupon code that you can use to get a whopping 25% off on your first order. So if you haven't taken advantage of that, I highly recommend you do. I believe they just successfully funded another Kickstarter for their uh, Dice of Giants Series 2, so super cool.
Yeah, and if
Also,
you manage to, or if you somehow missed out on that, you can pay attention to the Kickstarter page. There should be usually there's a pre-order that you can get in on it late. Yeah, there's a lot of fun things with that. They did unlock the D6s as well, so you could get essentially 14 different giant dice out of that set. So a lot of fun.
so many dice. Also, you'll find a link in the description to D&D in a Castle, where myself and Ted will be running games next year, July 8th through 12th, I believe. 2023 at Lumley Castle. Spaces of the tables are already filling up. There's limited spaces. So if that's something you're interested in and you want to take a luxury D&D vacation, here's your opportunity, and we'd be more than happy for you to do it with us.
And not only are you going to see the two of us there as well. But there's also going to be some other great people there as well. Not only could you game with us, but you might be able to get into a one shot with Jeremy Crawford. So there's definitely some great perks into joining such a game.
For sure. So, do you, since we are at the halfway point, do you have business to attend to?
I do. I uh, had a box show up today, so we have some new shelf guardians joining in the local pack today. We have a cool little goblin and a cool little kobold,
Ooh.
by Kid Robot and Whiz Kids. So if you pay attention to the set, you'll see that there's typically critters and things behind me. We like to change them out and show cool stuff. So these guys
I
will.
know, is Pathfinder going to be edging out some of the D&D stuff?
I mean, we
They're
have
making their
regular.
move. They're making their big move.
It is what it is, but these guys are just awesome. There's a couple that are out there also by Kid Robot that I'm looking to get my hands on eventually, but there's a cool belay that I definitely need to locate. Um, but it is also the first Monday of the month, and if you've been around for a while, you know what that means. And that's going to be we do our monthly giveaway announcement as well as the announcement of our fan game. This month is going to be Dave's game. He's going to get the odds, and I get the evens. So the while Dave looks at a calendar and figures out where he's going to get that game going, I'll read off the list. But we got Discipled One, David Taylor, Kenneth Vegan, Armando Pedraza, Daryl Lalonde, Alan Miles Quijano, Noah, Andrew, Robert Vaughn, and Victor Vell. Dave will. I actually haven't sent him the list of names and emails yet, but I'll get them to him, and he'll be able to email all of those lucky people, and we'll figure out how and when that gaming is going to happen. And then we have a giveaway that we send out. So this time we're going to be sending out a copy of the Dragons of Stormwreck Isle starter set, as well as the hefty Spelljammer set, Adventures in Space. So this weighty little bundle here is going to get sent to, and I apologize because they did not give us a last name, but the winner is Dan. So
Yay, Dan.
so if you signed up with only the name Dan, well, there's a chance that it's coming to you. I will get that email sent out to the lucky winner at some point in time in the next 36 hours, and then once I get an ad back, I'll be able to send it out to that lucky winner.
Yeah, I'll have to figure out when I'm doing my game. Sadly, so if you guys have been around and you watch the channel, you've got to realize like the views aren't quite what they used to be, and so our revenue has dropped significantly. So unfortunately, I've been working for Nerdarchy for full time for I don't know about 5 years now, 4 years now, and I had to go back and get a Muggle job. So we're still figuring out the details on the scheduling for pretty much everything.
So we managed to make this work, as well as our Tuesday night game will be as per normal. So we're thanking our stars that those things have not been interrupted, and we'll just get to move forward as we do. But that'll be between Dave and the lucky winners that I get to play, and we'll go from there. But
For sure. Yeah,
happen.
so we could play some D&D, we could play some Zoom Mafia if people were down for that.
Oh man.
Which we're trying to get more and more people playing. If I don't know if you haven't checked it out yet and you're gonna just not aware, we've basically have our beta alpha test for a game that we're working on, Zoo Mafia RPG. It is the premise is you're cute, cuddly zoo animals that want to go out and do crime, but don't let the humans catch you. You are trying to join a mob, a crime family, and that's kind of the objective of the game. But we have the free quick start rules up on ZooMafiaRPG.com. It's a newsletter that we're just using for that. You sign up for that newsletter, you get sent the rules for free, and you can go check it out. There's enough there to get started. It comes with a starter job, 4 playbooks, and the rules to get you going.
And there's 2 more jobs over on the website, I believe.
Yeah, we have 2 more
Jobs,
or not jobs, 2 more playbooks
playbooks. Yes, my
over
apologies.
on the website. And also we put them up over as PDFs over on the Patreon. So if you become a Patreon, you'll have to probably dig through a couple of the posts, but they are there. They do exist.
So it's a lot of fun. We've run quite a number of games. We just did recorded, certain exactly when it's gonna air, but we did another Zoo Mafia looking back, see how things are going process video. And I felt it went well. So be on the lookout for that if you're a Zoo Mafia fan.
Yeah, also, we're going to be at PAX Unplugged, and we are looking to run Zoo Mafia. So initially, my thought was for us to just go and sign up to run games, but apparently PAX Unplugged doesn't do it that way, like most conventions do. So we're gonna let people know through that newsletter, how we're gonna figure out where we're gonna run the games and how you can get involved with those games. So that would be another reason to sign up for that if you wanted to check that out as well.
But it's an absolute blast. If you haven't had a chance to check out Zoo Mafia, highly recommend you do so. It's a game where we hack power by the apocalypse, and more specifically monster of the week. But I've not heard a single player give any kind of negative feedback.
Yeah.
Everyone who's had an absolute blast with it. So
Yeah, we need to play with more people more people we don't know that might not be inclined to be nice to us. I think that's what we need now.
well, I mean, I technically ran it for people who didn't know who Nerdarchy was at the castle. So I mean, it was a situation where some of them were pretty noob to it, um, and they all had an absolute blast with it.
So anybody in the chat, are you going to be at PAX Unplugged, Zoo Mafia's side? Ted's always really easy to find if you see him because he's got this vest emblazoned with the Nerdarchy N. You've probably seen it on social media, so he kind of stands
Yeah,
out.
I mean, if you look at the D&D and a castle pictures that have me in it, usually I've got my armor. It's got the big leather N, almost like a superhero thing.
Yeah,
I typically have my mimic bag with me, which now Ludlow is the mimic. He carries my autograph book, so instead of me signing stuff for other people,
yeah.
all that I meet, I ask you to sign something for me.
Yeah, I actually so at the Muggle job, I ran into Brandon today, who recognized me from Nerdarchy, and I'm like still in the training phase for stuff, and he's wearing one of the trainer vests, and he starts walking up to me, like he calls out to me. I was like, oh man, did I mess something up? And and he's like, hey, you're with Nerdarchy, aren't you? I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah, you're the one that looks like Santa Claus. I'm like, thanks, I guess. That's why, like, my wife trimmed up my beard for me, and I cut quite a bit of it off. And she's like, I don't know if I want to cut that much off. I'm like, look, hon, we're getting to that time of year. Little kids I don't know are gonna start running up to me between this beard and this belly. Look, it's just gonna be weird. Let's get rid of some of it.
I
So
I was gonna say, you did look like you trimmed some of the beard up, but
yeah, I lost some weight from my face. So I think that's all of the announcements. So sign up or keep your eyes open for those. Also, if you want to play in the Nerdarchy one shots, there's one of 2 ways to do it. We throw all the patrons' name on the list as well as anyone that signs up for the newsletter. Um, there's a special sign up for just for the games, and that's all it is. And then we randomly pull names from it.
yep, and that's how you get in. And we'll, like I said, we'll do D&D, we'll do Zoom. Love getting more feedback on that game, but we understand a lot of people who come here are looking for D&D stuff, so we got no problem playing and running D&D. So
That's true. I mean, we pretty much play D&D every week anyway, at least once. So
I
tomorrow night
mean,
we'll be back with those bastards after having a couple of weeks off.
yep. And speaking of playing D&D and time off, I don't know how much of you out there follow me over to Mini Terrain Domain, whether it be on the YouTube channel or live on Twitch. But we are taking an extended break from the Dawnbringers. We'll be back to that game just after the turn of the new year. We were originally planning, like so many other places, taking December off, but that's due to one thing or another has been pushed out through all of November. So that's the warning. We are closing in on the end of the Dawnbringers game, and then we'll see what happens next. But Dawnbringers, I believe, has only got about eight more games left, so we'll probably be up, in and around the beginning of March.
Park says when I had the red beard, reminded him more of Brunar than Santa. I'm pretty sure the red beard then came from a bottle as well. I mean, back way when my beard was more red, but as I got older, it got darker, and then it
Right.
went white. So also this weekend we got Wormfest.
We do. We have Wormfest coming up this weekend, which is an online convention. You can hang out with Dave on Saturday, and then myself on Sunday in the spaceship.
Yeah, it's really cool. If you just Google Wormfest, something should come up. We're going to be in the vendor hall. If enough people come up and want to play Zoo Mafia, I'll run Zoo Mafia for them in the open gaming area. It's I think We Gather is the name of the platform they're
Yes.
using. We did a one shot last week where we played Vast Grim, and Wormfest is an online RPG convention, basically supporting Vast Grim and trying to get the word out for Vast Grim. But there's going to be open gaming spaces too, so people can just go and play other games. And also, it's really cool. So the convention floor, you basically go in and you have your own little, like, they remind me of the Wii Mii's, but you have your own little avatar, and then it's on the spaceship, and then the spaceship has a bunch of different rooms in it. There's a panel, which also I think I'm doing a panel as well. I should probably figure all this out before it happens. There's a vending hall, there's an art hall, there's game rooms that are just for Vast Grim. There's open play areas where people are just going to gather and play games. It's completely free, and it's really cool. Like, we before we played our game, we actually used that platform when we streamed it, and like it was us walking around, and then we go to the table, then we get into the table, and then we play. And then I did a live chat last Friday afternoon with Brian talking about Wormfest, and we also used the platform as well again to do the live chat so people could kind of check it out and see what it was about. Can
Okay.
people just observe games going on at Wormfest? I don't think so. I think the way the software works is only the people in the table can interact with each other. So, like, I don't know that you can just go up to them and see, like, kind of be on the peripheral and see what's going on.
Yeah, you can't hear the conversation unless you're part of the conversation. So like it was weird. There were times while we were kind of off stream, people were walking around, and when you leave the group, you no longer hear what they're saying. It was definitely weird. Of all of a sudden, I'm like, okay, I'm standing next to this person, and I take one step this way, and now it drops off, and I
Yeah,
can't.
well, it's not instant. Like, it fades, right? It starts to fade
Sure.
out. I want to say like in real life, but yes and no. It is kind of like weird that way, but people are just trying to find ways to connect.
And I'm here for it.
So until we can actually, eventually it'll just be VR headsets, or I think that's what Zuckerberg's trying to get going on, but I don't think it's doing so well. It's too weird.
I don't know how VR headsets and glasses work yet. I've not gone down that rabbit hole yet.
Well, it's right there. I guess if as long as it fits, it's probably okay. I don't think it's like as annoying. I don't think it'll be annoying like 3D glasses because you're not looking through
Hmm.
the VR the way you are with the glasses.
Right.
You're looking through your glasses into the VR, not through your glasses through 3D glasses to the screen. But they've gotten better too.
Well, I mean,
So
technology, everything is, it's certainly improved.
Dak, I wonder if if that distance and fade out could be tweaked a bit more of realism. Probably, and I'm sure it's something they're probably always like messing with and trying to figure out. What is the right because and also too if it doesn't fade enough, like you'd be grabbing too many people around you, in that fade it, which would probably be way more annoying
Right.
than so in that case it's probably not really worth the realism. So I don't know. I don't know. Brian said he's seen someone else use this platform and do a convention this way. So he's checking it out to see what it's like. But who knows? It might be the way of the future, especially for small game companies.
So we'll see how this goes this weekend, and if it seems to have drawn in a crowd and seems to do well, then perhaps we'll a zoo tour convention
I
and run.
was talking to Brian about that, like doing it and having like all the meeting spaces at the different enclosures in the zoo.
Hmm. Yep. Yeah.
Uh,
That was my
although
thought process.
I'm not confident in my ability to set that up because Brian is
Sure.
actually like a bit is a I think he's a web designer by trade. So
Yeah, we would probably have to ask for some help or some can you do? But that's what we have friends for, right?
I or pay people, one or the other.
Or pay people.
That
I
works
was gonna
too.
but as we kind of round out our last 15 minutes or what have you, if you got any questions and you want to throw them up in the chat, feel free. Whether it's related to famine or not, it's not a problem. Uh,
I got a question for you, man. Like this is the first convention we're going to this year, right?
uh, PAX, or you're talking about Wormfest?
PAX Unplugged, that like actual physical convention. I don't. I guess
Yeah,
by the time it comes around, it'll be our second if you count the virtual convention.
I mean, I went to Cogs back in May, but I mean, it's not not a big convention, not a straight up gaming convention.
Yeah, well, that's true. Well, this will be my first convention for the year. Is there anything in particular you're looking forward to?
There's nothing. I haven't seen any, schedule or vendor list yet. Part of me just enjoys getting out there and seeing people and getting recognized. I'm looking forward to, you know, getting to run some Zoo Mafia for some people and getting some feedback from somebody who might not be in the know. You know,
Yeah,
whether they're aware of who Nerdarchy is or not.
we need some grumpy players to really hammer out some details.
Sure. Um, but it is what it is. I think it's going to be fun. We went to PAX Unplugged last year, and they had the mask mandate, which I felt was pretty well, and they had their enforcers making sure that people were wearing them and wearing them properly, which I definitely feels safer.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone's still doing that stuff now. We'll see. I'm just
Um,
excited to finally see all of our internet friends again.
yeah, it is always good to run into the people that you've built connections with.
Tim S, how far have you all gone in abbreviating combat rules? I once DM'd for kids and hella simplified combat. It went quick and exciting compared to D&D rules as written, which tends to go so slow. I don't think we've really abbreviated D&D rules much per se, but I will say in like designing our own game, We wanted them to be fast and not take 2 hours to do a combat.
If you want a game that has combat that goes fast, Powered by the Apocalypse, Quest, they do seem to go pretty darn quick. Cypher, I think, is along the same lines. Um, but I've done some abbreviated combat, but it's not been anything where I'm like, oh, here's hard and fast rules that I have, meticulously worked and printed out. I just was like, all right, roll a d20 and we'll see how this goes. Um, you know, because a while ago I was running uh games for RPG Crate here on the channel, and I was running their prepared material, and there was, some of them was like there was a lot of combats, and we tried to streamline, that game to like 2 to 2.5 hours, and I was like, there's no way I can get through all of these combats. If a combat tends to take 45 minutes and you've got four combats, that's 3 hours if you just go from combat to combat to combat to combat. So I was like, I need to do something different. So I snipped one entirely, and I used one as just, it got narrated based off of a couple of d20 rolls or something along those lines. Um, but I think that's one of those things that there are a large portion of players out there who really love D&D combat, and that's what they're there for. So I don't think it's easy to kind of tweak it like
Yeah, D&D is just not really a great system for that,
that. And that's
unfortunately.
I mean that's why there are so many different options of games that are here.
Yeah.
As I realize I'm gesturing off camera to, where alternate rule sets are. Oh, well.
Well, I mean, you can. A lot of them get seen in our videos.
Yeah. So like a lot of that is, in and around where Dave's head is, which, is off camera to my left. But I mean, we have lots of different rule sets, and a bunch of them we've, wound up playing and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it too is like because like that kind of mentions like some of the stuff we've done on the stream games on the channel and stuff like that. I think when you're streaming too, like combat is like one of the least entertaining parts of the stream, right? So it's like
Sure.
always cool to have like a combat in there. But I think we tend to do smaller combats so that they don't last forever, because if you were to do like actual full blown, I'm going to make a challenging encounter D&D encounters in a stream, like that would be most of the stream if not all of it.
Completely.
Especially if you're going to get really tactical as well.
I've some of the games that I've done with the Dawnbringers have gone down those roads where it was like, all right, we played several sessions all back to back where it was almost like continuous combat throughout as we, went through Rime of the Frost Maiden. So there was some heavy combat elements to that particular game. you know, Campaign has been an absolute blast and whatnot, but I can definitely recall a couple of times where, yep, single combat stream.
And like so like that stuff is fine like if you're playing at your table, your own game. And I think I think it's enjoyable for the people playing. I don't know that it makes for a super enjoyable stream to watch. If that's all it is, and there's a lot of that.
Sure. And if it's all just combat, then yeah, I mean, but if like the Dawnbringers is a I feel like a perfect mix of combat and role playing and story and what have you. I think Jake is a fantastic GM. So it brings those moments in where like if you really care about the characters, then seeing if they survive through the combat does mean more.
You're welcome, Parks. It's what we like to. That's what we like to hear. Keep people plugged in. Keep people coming back. New gamers, gamers are like, I haven't done this in 20 years, and then they decide to pick up the D20 again. That is like some of our favorite things to hear. I guess especially when like it's gamers that are like our age that haven't played in a long time because they had to grow up, quote unquote, and gave it up. But it's like, hey, you know what? Some people like to drink beer and watch sports, and we like to play
Well,
make believe and roll funny shaped dice.
there you go. And we're here for it. So you're welcome. We're happy to to have you in the Nerdarchy family. We always enjoy talking to those who we've impacted one way or another. So always good stuff.
Yeah. So I wonder what PAX is going to look like this year because last year was a little skimpy, right? Uh, with the
I
vending
think
and stuff.
I think considering um what the COVID restrictions were, I was expecting less. So I was pleased with it. Now, based on what I've read in regards to PAX, I still think that they are going to be doing the mask mandates, but it'll be like they'll make the decision when they make the decision.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, I'm hoping that we have like this, the vendor numbers come back up. I'd like to
I would, I
see.
would, I would hope that as well because like there's, with limited vendors, some of the people that we like to see, might be cut out or cut off. There's there's definitely people that I like to like hang out and talk with, at their booth. So
It always takes me like the whole convention to get through the whole floor because I spend so much time just gabbing and BSing.
sure.
Dak, that's a name from the past I haven't heard from a very long time. Sword and sorcery books. They had some great monster books. Is
They
is what I most remember from that company.
they were the creature collections.
They were creature collections. Yeah, I think they had like three of them.
They had at least three. I don't know if there were more. Um, Now I don't know whether that name is kind of gone about because I feel like there is a new company of sword and sorcery that's not might not be the same company, but
Oh, yeah, maybe. I don't know. Or um well, Sword and Sorcery was that I don't know if that was the series or if that was the company.
hmm.
I'm not positive that that was the publisher. I
I
might
mean, I
even I,
could.
I might even have a couple of those books laying around here
Oh,
someplace.
I know exactly where mine are.
Yeah. You're much better. I got just stacks of books everywhere.
Well, I've also have been through some major shifting of things in my house. So a lot of my third edition things have been relegated to over there because I only have so much space in the storage area for the stuff that was in the attic. So I've, for those who aren't aware, I'm doing a whole renovation on the house and building and what have you, and that's caused for some major upheaval in the whole Adams household.
Yeah. You're expanding the size of your lair.
Indeed,
Does it come with new lair actions?
I hope so.
Maybe a regional effect or two?
I would be delighted at a regional effect. I was just hoping for a effect.
What would come on, people? What would Nerdarchist Ted's regional effect be? Inquirer minds want to know. So we are just about that time, but we'll be back tomorrow night for Those Bastards, 8:30 p.m. I do not have anyone scheduled for this Friday with my own schedule being so in such flux. I might just take this week off and get back to it next week once I see how everything goes. Um,
So in regards to tomorrow night, you might just find Sin casting a new spell, and not just a new spell for him, but one that Ted has developed. So we'll see whether that
uh,
turns or not.
you
Uh,
conned their GM into letting you make up your own spells.
they love when their spellcasters make new spells, and I specifically was like, "Hey, what are your thoughts?" And before I even started making anything, they're like, "Yes, go for it, do it." So I got the thumbs up
Uh,
for for my new spell. We'll see whether
Hopefully you'll be able to cast it. And do you have a game coming up Friday?
and we do. The Untraditionally Arcane will be back on Friday night. They will be back playing their wizards, not their familiars this time. We'll see what transpires with those crazy nuts.
Awesome, awesome. So with that, until next time, everybody, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.